Now, as you'll know, last weekend was Dunfermline Folk Weekend and there were some absolutely fantastic performances all around town. Well, it doesn't stop there because Dunfermline Folk Club has some more fantastic performers lined up at the Thistle Tavern every Wednesday. One of them is internationally renowned performer Sarah Mcquaid, and she's on the line right now. Good afternoon, Sarah. How are you?
Very well, thank you, David.
Thanks for taking the time out from your busy tour to talk to us today. You're not long back from the United States, I believe. How did that go?
Oh, it was great. It was a long tour, 8.5 weeks. Kind of started in Texas at the start of September and did a great big figure of 8 around the whole country, from Texas way up to Minnesota and then way down to Florida and back in a big semicircle, finishing up in New York and then over through the Midwest, over to California, up to Seattle, and then back to Texas again, all by road.
And you fitted
so
that
lots
all
and
into
lots
8
of driving, but fantastic. Did some great stuff. Did a syndicated television show over there, which goes out on a whole load of different stations and also on radio. Did a gig in New York at a fantastic place called The Living Room. Did some lovely gigs at places I'd played before in North Carolina and Kansas and California and up in Seattle. 45 gigs in all, and some of which I'd played before, but a lot of which I hadn't, so it was pretty exciting.
You also have a very extensive UK tour now that's coming to Dunfermline next Wednesday. What have you got planned for this leg of your tour?
Well, this is a 5-week tour. It starts in Yorkshire on Sunday, and then I'm up in Edinburgh on Tuesday, Dunfermline, and then Crail after Dunfermline, and then heading back south again, and all around England and Wales, and finishing up on the 2nd of December up in Cumbria, I think, and then I'll be going home to Penzance again for a longer break. This time I only had 5 days at home. It's really more like 4 days because I got home very late Monday night from the USA. Very happy to get home at all, given the situation with storms and flooding and all sorts.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I think I got out by a whisker.
I've been online watching a few of your videos and you come across as a fantastic, really natural performer. I do wonder though, where does the inspiration for your music and song come from?
I've had a lot of different influences. I sang in a children's choir when I was little, and I think that kind of got me used to performing and used to being on stage, because I was doing that from a very young age. It was called the Chicago Children's Choir, and we did tours all around the U.S., and we'd go out for kind of 10 days at a time and be doing shows every night and school concerts in the afternoon, and I was doing that. Well, I was touring from age 9 up to 14 when I left the choir. That was a really good introduction to the kind of discipline of touring and getting up on stage in front of people and, not being frightened of it and things like that. My mother played music. She was big into folk music. She sang and played the guitar, and she taught me to play guitar and piano as well. And when I was in my teens, I started getting into more sort of singer-songwriters like Nick Drake and Joni Mitchell and people like that. Joined a trad Irish band when I was living in France. When I was in college, I went to live in France for a year and wound up kind of by accident playing with a traditional Irish band there and got kind of immersed in Irish music and wound up living in Ireland for 13 years and then five years ago moved to Cornwall in the southwest of England. And I've met lots of other musicians along the way that have been influential as well. I made an album with a wonderful songwriter called Zoe. She had a big hit single, you might remember, in 1991 with a song that she wrote called Sunshine on a Rainy Day. Yeah, that's
I remember.
The one. We met because our kids go to the same tiny little school in West Cornwall, and I got to be friends with her, and we wound up writing a whole load of songs together and making an album of them. And I think it was working with Zoe that really made me start to actually see myself as a songwriter. Up till that point, I'd thought of myself as a folk singer who wrote an occasional song. But when I was working with Zoe and writing songs that really kind of went beyond the folk singer-songwriter kind of genre, I mean, we were described by one reviewer as two pagan goddesses channeling the ghost of Jim Morrison.
Wow.
So there you go. So I think in my own songwriting, I've kind of tried to just write songs and not worry about what audience they're for or what genre they're going to be seen as part of.
Now, you have a very busy schedule touring. You still have time to record album after album. The latest one, The Plum Tree and the Rose, you recorded that back in March, is that correct?
It came out in March. I recorded it last year.
That's something a little bit different for you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, two things are different. One is that it's the first album that I've made that really focuses on my own songs. My previous two albums just had My first album had one of my own songs. My second album had two of my own songs. In between the second album and the third one, which is the one that's just come out, I made the album with Zoe. And the new album has 9 of my own songs on it, so that's quite a departure. And it's also the first album that I've made with a record label. It's on a really nice little independent label based in the USA, in Chicago actually, which is kind of my hometown, so that's nice. And it's called the Waterbug label, and a lot of other musicians whose work I really like and admire are on that, and so it's lovely to be part of that as well.
Well, let's play a track from that album so we can have a flavour of exactly what you sound like. What one should we go for?
How about The Sun Goes On Rising, because that was the first single from the album.
Radio West Fife.
Sarah Mcquaid's The Sun Goes On Rising on Radio West Fife. A fantastic track, Sarah, if I may say so. I believe you're married with kids. Where do you find the time to squeeze absolutely everything in? You've got so much going on.
Well, when my kids were little, when they were babies, I had a full-time job. And I was absolutely miserable then because I used to have to leave them to nursery really early in the morning and collect them in the evening, and then everything would be a rush, and then the weekends were a big rush, and I was just miserable. And it was my husband said, "Why don't you go back to playing music? Wouldn't that be better than being unhappy all the time and always feeling pleased?" And I said, "Oh, I couldn't possibly, because I'd have to, if I was going to make a living playing music, I'd have to tour, I'd have to go away, and you wouldn't like that, would you?" And he said, "Well, I'd rather you were happy, and we'd probably see more of you on balance than we do at the moment." And he was dead right, because the way it is now, I do spend a lot of time on the road, but then when I'm home, and I kind of work my tour schedule around my kids' school holidays. For example, I'm home this week because they're on their half-term this week, and then I'll be away for the month of November on tour. I'll be back on the 3rd of December, and then I'll be home for 3 months, December, January, February, and I'll be here all the time during those 3 months. I'll be away for the month of March on tour in continental Europe, and then I'll be home for 2 weeks in April when they're off school as well.
Exactly what I mean.
You see what I mean?
You've got it all under control.
Then away for 6 weeks again, and then home for the summer. So that's my year. I kind of March, April, May are kind of my touring months, and September, October, November, apart from when there are short little school holidays, and then I make sure I'm home for those. And it seems to work out. They seem happy enough. Skype is brilliant as well. I talk to the kids on Skype all the time, and that's great because they can see me and I can see them, and I can kind of show them where I am. I can hold the phone up and show them the scenery where I am, and they can show me things they've made at school and stuff, and that's brilliant as well.
A brilliant way to use new technology.
Yeah.
I believe you're quite happy to pass on your musical expertise to others as well, and you've written a book to that effect. What's the book about?
The book is about the tuning that I use all the time. I play in an alternative tuning called DADGAD, D-A-D-G-A-D. It's just a different way of tuning the strings. 3 of the strings are tuned to different notes than standard tuning. And what it gives you is a really lovely, full, rich sound, because you get because you have 3 different strings tuned to D and 2 different strings tuned to A, you get a lot of what's called sympathetic resonance, which is that the strings you're not playing are still sounding and resonating because they're tuned to the same frequency that strings that are being played are tuned to. And that gives you this really lovely kind of fullness, which is great for me, especially because I'm a solo performer. But I mean, a lot of guitarists who play in bands play in DADGAD as well. And I wrote that book ages ago, and it's still in print, and it's still sold in shops all around the world, which I'm very happy about because I get royalties from it still. And I give workshops occasionally as well in the DADGAD tuning. I don't think I have a workshop in association with the gig in Dunfermline. Just quickly looking to make sure, am I giving a workshop? No, it doesn't look like I'm giving a workshop, but I sometimes do, and I'll have the book with me at the concert as well.
Excellent. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Sarah. All the best with the rest of the tour. And can you remind us of what we need to know about the gig next Wednesday?
It's at the Dunfermline Folk Club, which is in the Thistle Tavern, and it starts at 8 o'clock. You can read all about it on the Dunfermline Folk Club website, which there's a link to from my website. My website is sarahmcquaid.com. That's sarahmcquaid.com, and if you go to the calendar page, you'll see all the details of all the gigs I'm doing, including that one. I think there's a phone number for info as well, which is 01383 725 872.
That's absolutely brilliant, Sarah. All the best with the gig, as I say, and thanks for talking to Radio West Fife this afternoon.
Thank you so much, David. It's been lovely talking to you.